Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com. Oh my God, it had to happen. This is the Bruckner year, and the Bruckner year hasn't been going too badly, actually. It's been rather calm. There's been, of course, a couple of horrible Bruckner cycles popping up by Telemann and Andres Nelsons and people like that. But on the whole, it's been rather quiet because, let's face it, Bruckner is not a composer that most people really care about. Now, I know all of you who love him are going to go, oh, I love it, it's wonderful. I love it too. It is wonderful, it's fabulous. But Bruckner is not a composer who's going to engender the kind of hysteria that we got, for example, in the Mozart year, when just crazy tons of stuff was issued, everything the guy wrote and editions and stuff. It was insane. The fact is, Bruckner wrote tons of music before he started writing the symphonies, because he was in his late 40s, early 50s when he started writing symphonies. And there was a ton of music before that. A lot of it hasn't been recorded and may never be, who knows. There's the symphonies themselves. Well, there's only however many you care to count, forget the multiple editions of everything. Nobody cares about all these multiple editions of all this crap that's coming out, all this activity in the hermetically sealed bubble of the Bruckner verse. That's not Bruckner, that's Bruckner. Yeah, that kind of Bruckner. You know what I mean? Just the nonsensical Bruckner. And so, like I said, it's been rather quiet and uneventful. Except, well, it had to happen. This thing shows up. The complete Bruckner symphonies with other garbage attached by Hansjörg Albrecht, transcribed for organ. Organ transcriptions at original European venues. What does that mean? Well, what that means is that they're venues that Bruckner once played at. Of course, he never played his symphonies in any of those venues. Here's the curious thing about Bruckner. Bruckner was one of the greatest organists of the period. Everybody agrees on that. But he wrote almost no organ music. Very, very little, like just a couple little preludes or something. Nothing, because he believed that organ music was improvised. It had to be improvised. And so when he gave recitals, he played improvisations of his own devising, for the most part. That is, his original music was stuff that he improvised. And that was that. And he never wrote them down. And we don't know really what they sounded like. And everybody loved them, but that was it. When he wanted to write music, he wrote symphonies. And I think we need to get rid of one of the great myths of Bruckner's life, because they feel that because he was an organist, his orchestration sounds like the organ. It doesn't. It doesn't sound anything like an organ. Yes, he liked chorales, and organs like to play chorales. Okay, I give it that. There's a chorale type business. And he liked dynamic contrast between suddenly loud and soft and whatnot, but there are lots of composers who did that. His music is not orchestral organ music. Anybody who knows anything about orchestration, about timbre, about how a symphony orchestra operates, will tell you there is not a bar of a Bruckner symphony that can reasonably be said to have been transcribed in some way from an organ original sonority. All of the things that he does, the echo effects, the little canonic things, the inversions, the use of the woodwind section as a sort of separate entity within the larger orchestra, the big rich brass chorales, all of those things can only be realized as orchestral effects, and they are orchestral effects. Because, and how do we know that? Because when we hear them on the organ, they sound like shit. It sounds terrible on the organ. His music is horrible when played on the organ, the symphonies, because they aren't organ music. They just aren't. And not all the transcriptionary wizardry that these people try to put into this stuff are going to make a damn bit of difference. You can't do it. And God knows Hansjörg Albrecht doesn't do it. Now, what we get in this horrendous box of mindless dreck are all of the symphonies, all 9 of them, including the F minor Study Symphony. Oh my God. And Symphony number 0. I'm not going to get into what version of each of the regular symphonies he uses. Thank God he just picks one and goes with it. And they're basically the normal ones. But you also get the Overture in G minor. I mean, you get all of his orchestral music. Even things like the Overture in G minor, which was clearly not intended to evoke the organ at any point. I mean, none of this was. But along with each of these discs, each symphony, you get a modern composer doing what's called a Bruckner Fenster, a Bruckner window. This is the ultimate in parasitism. I mean, granted, somebody doing organ transcriptions of all the Bruckner symphonies is parasitical, right? Because you're taking something that the composer didn't write and reimagining it in a medium that he didn't want, because God knows he was one of the greatest organists in the world. He certainly could have written organ music if he wanted to. He could have written organ symphonies like Widor, for example, or Franck or somebody, but he didn't. So there you are. And you're somehow attaching your name to these things in whatever style you feel like doing it. These pieces are ghastly for the most part. Really, really ghastly. And listen, I know parasitism when I see it. How do I know it? Because I'm a critic. We're the biggest parasites in the business. I mean, that's what we do. We feed like leeches off of the greatness of other artists, by telling them whether what they're doing is any good or not. If that isn't parasitism, then what is? Well, this is that. I mean, this is even worse because these Bruckner Fensters, my cat, sorry, Fensters, are not in any way. I mean, they're you're being parasitical on top of the parasite. You know what I mean? It's double parasitism. It's grotesque. They're horrible. And so you also get, the March in D minor and his symphonic prelude in C minor, the Psalm 150, and just all kinds of other little things that he wrote, which these people have arranged for organ. The 2 Equale for trombones, those are in there, and the fanfare Ecce Sacerdos Magnus, and a bit of his Requiem, and a fantasy in C major, which is a reconstruction of something he never actually did. I mean, it's just speculative garbage. Anyway, it doesn't really matter whether the performances are good or bad, because they're bad by definition. They're bad because you cannot play these symphonies on the organ at all. And I'm going to show you a very quick example that makes the case, I think, just about perfectly. The end of the first movement of the 6th Symphony, right? The final peroration has 3 distinct layers of rhythm. The one thing the organ cannot do is rhythm. Firm rhythm. You've got the timpani going bum ba-ta-ta-ta-tum, 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 ba-ta-ta-ta-tum underneath. Then you've got a rapid rhythm in triplets from the strings. Then you got the big tune in the brass. Da da bum 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 bum, and slower triplets. And that is the rhythmic character of the entire movement. Now an organ cannot do that. Cannot make these 3 layers of rhythm distinct and clear or audible. And in this performance, indeed, you don't hear it. So I'm going to play you the original, and then we're going to hear the organ version, and you'll see exactly what I mean, because it's just so clear how much you lose in attempting to do these things on the organ. It's horrible. So we have Bruckner symphonies with the New Zealand Symphony and Georg Tintner. Here is the end of the first movement of Symphony number 6. Okay, right? That's what it sounds like. It's lovely. And here is Hansjörg Albrecht doing it on the organ. Oh my God. Horrendous. I mean, there's no timpani, obviously, so there's no rhythm on the bottom. You don't hear the quick motion of the strings at all. All you get is sludge. All those wonderful echo effects that Bruckner wrote into the piece, they're lost on the organ, because the echo you're getting is the acoustic of the cathedral or wherever the hell they're playing. I mean, you get reverberation, but there's a big difference between reverberation and what Bruckner so carefully wrote into his scores. In addition, in order to have any semblance of rhythm, there's only one way you can do it, which is to slow it down to the point where the rhythm is perceptible, because there's no attack in organ music. You know, so the opening on the high strings, all you hear here is like that. You just don't hear the rhythm. And he takes the first movement at like over 18 minutes, which is, I mean, this one is 17, and that's pretty slow. I mean, it's crazy. It's like Chilabadaki tempos sometimes, not always, but sometimes. And, you know, there isn't any point in really going into the sordid details work by work, because they're all equally horrible in their own special way. I mean, it's, you know, horrible, or horriblest, you know, 9 times over, 10 times over. Really, this is just a disgrace. And for that reason, it richly deserves, yes, the white scarf of irredeemable chutzpah. Absolutely. If there's ever a time to break out the white scarf of irredeemable chutzpah, this is it. Because there is no excuse, just because Bruckner happened to be an organist, of insisting that the music somehow has legitimacy or validity in these grotesque transcriptions. I mean, Dvorak was an organist. You don't see people running around doing all of Dvorak's orchestral music on the organ. Well, yes, they did do the New World Symphony, and it was atrocious. Saint-Saëns was an organist, a wonderful organist, and he actually put an organ in one of his symphonies, not in any of the others. And you don't see people doing all of his music on the organ. Lots of composers were organists, really a surprisingly large number, and they all managed to be quite distinct. I mean, Elgar wrote an organ sonata, which has been orchestrated. Actually, it sounds better as an orchestral piece, probably, than it does in the organ original. You know, Mendelssohn was a first-class organist, and he wrote organ sonatas. You don't see people redoing all the Mendelssohn symphonies. You imagine the Italian symphony on an organ? I mean, there's no theory, no cognizable musical theory of Bruckner that states that his music somehow needs to be heard or benefits from being heard on the organ. It does not. And then on top of having these horrible Fenster things and other glop attached to the symphonies, you also have, this is the best part, wait a minute. This was done according to Albrecht, and I think the complete disc, by the way, one of the Fensters is the one that goes with Symphony Number 5, because it's such a slow and boring and horrible performance. There's no room on the CD for it. You only get it as a digital-only special. What a bonus, right? Now, but he says, wait a minute. This is just fabulous. Here we go. He talks about, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the conductor Christian Thielemann, who is not only regarded as the world's leading Bruckner interpreter, by who, I wonder, but has also supported this project as patron with great interest and openness. Yeah, right. First of all, the fact that he thinks Telemann is the greatest Bruckner conductor in the world, or is regarded that way, already disqualifies him because he's living on another planet. That's number one. But number two, the fact that Telemann is supporting this, I mean, of course he is. It's probably the only thing that's going to make his Bruckner sound better in comparison. He's probably laughing every single day he thinks about this stuff. I mean, it's all just this weird, the Bruckner bubble. Like I said, people who are just not living in reality. And the saddest thing is that it's neither musical reality nor Brucknerian reality. It's just delusional. It's delusional, and it absolutely has earned the scarlet. No, that's not scarlet. This is the white scarf of irredeemable chutzpah. The scarlet scarf of shame is also in the running, frankly, for this particular set. And but I think the sheer unmitigated gall of trying to pass this off as a legitimate recreation of anything that Bruckner put into these symphonies is what really, really earns it this one. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.